Bonjour, bonjour. Thanks to everybody who got in touch after my last video. You asked for me to keep going, and so here it is, reportage number 4. Coming to you from the Twilight Zone in southwest France, where since we last spoke we have lost no further people to the plague. The death toll stands at 5 in my department of the cruise of 120,000 people. Across France the epidemic is abating. Case numbers are dropping, as are the death rates, which is really great news. Now, if we follow the data, we can see that the epidemic is behaving in a completely normal way, and as such, you can project when it will end. And it's set to be flatlining around the end of May, which is further really great news. But not if you look at the media. According to the government and the media, life will never be the same, and we have to continue the social distancing measures. Brussels is rolling out a pan-European trace, track and surveillance app for us to put on our phones. The pandemic pantomime is never ending. Why is this? There will be no more epidemic by the end of May. How are they going to continue this farce? And why? Why won't they let it go? Well, I am about to tell you why. So, now, if you think that all of this farce is down to government incompetence, or you think that maybe the government are doing their best for you under the circumstances, I would tell you that this is slightly beyond naive. You have to know that there are corporate financial interests behind this whole thing, working behind the scenes. Only an ignorant child would not know this. Now, who are behind this? The media and government are framing this as a war. We are in a conflict. The public is asked to rally, as in war times. The troops are being hero worshipped. We're having a minute's silence for the fallen, and the war chest is well and truly opened in the form of a never-ending credit line. The economy, and I don't mean the system or the monetary system, I mean us. We are the economy, our enterprise, our creativity, our productivity. We are being mortally wounded and becoming the collateral damage in this war. And apparently in this war we are all in it together, but I would ask, really, are we? As in all wars, there are profiteers behind the scenes. And usually it is the profiteers who bankroll the whole event. So who are they? Firstly, we have Big Pharma, who are set to profit endlessly from endless testing and endless annual vaccines. Next, you have the tech companies, the big tech companies, who are now being asked to roll out much technology in order to fight the enemy. And thirdly, we have the private banking cartel, who will roll out endless debt, and in the post-war depression will nationalise our infrastructure, privatise and commodify our natural resources. Please see what happened to the PIGS countries in the banking collapse of 2008. Now, who wages war? Governments certainly, but usually you will find that behind every war is a corporate interest or financial interest. And why do they wage wars? To grab for power and to control natural resources. And it is these forces who are waging this war, and it is not against a virus. This war is against humanity and nature itself. I will explain. Any epidemiologist will tell you that this is no way to deal with an epidemic. A virus is a natural event in a human life and a natural event in a human society. And it usually will come to a natural conclusion, as in, yes, some may die, but it will end up in a collective immunity and will conclude. Now, you may think that the virus is not natural, that it's released from a lab. I'd say you're probably right. Every country is dabbling in this kind of nonsense, and I would say that they release them all the time. However, Even if it isn't natural, it seems to be behaving in a perfectly natural way, as all epidemics do, and will come to a natural conclusion as such. Now, if we start to play the blame game, we will end up actually in another kind of war, a more traditional war, and we really don't want to go there. And in any case, if this is an unnatural virus released upon the people, it just proves my point that this is actually a war against us. Now, I would say that as a virus is in fact a personal and very subjective event, as in you will either experience no symptoms, some symptoms, mild symptoms, or you may actually become completely overwhelmed by it. That is down to what is happening in your body at that time. And we would be better to create a battle plan to support our organisms, our bodies, to deal better with viruses. And that would be to drink clean water, eat good food, natural vitamins and minerals, sunshine and fresh air. This would perhaps be a better course of action than staying at home, being terrified, waiting for synthetic immunity and washing your hands. Perhaps we should wage war instead on poisonous food, poisoned air, poisoned water, poisonous medications, which are all foisted on us by the same global corporate interests who are waging this war. So, an epidemic being a natural event, a virus being a natural part of us, we have 380 trillion of them within our bodies. I would say that this war is actually not against a virus, it is against us and nature. This war is constructed by the media, funded by the banks, imposed by the government, and planned entirely by the UN, the WHO, who are in turn funded and controlled by the same global corporate financial interests, who happen to be the profiteers. This is a war against humankind, and it is a war which has been going on for about 200 years. It's a war in the form of a war against natural food, natural medicine, natural agriculture, and the weapons come in the form of genetically modified organisms, poisonous chemicals in our air, water and food, harmful agricultural practices, and the ownership and control of natural resources for the profit of the corporate interests and the destruction of the environment. They do not care who dies, who suffers, and what gets destroyed in their pursuit. Now, why are they waging a war against nature and humanity? I will tell you why. Because they can only control resources, and they cannot own nature or natural processes, which means they cannot profit from them unless they are synthesized, chemically altered. They cannot profit from nature. This is not capitalism. It is a form of fascism in that it is a collaboration of state and corporate. All of your laws are written in the interests of corporate financial institutions. Now, they do this by restricting markets for their benefit, restricting healthcare and medicines for their profits. They chemicalise agriculture for their profit. They poison food for their benefit. They are allowed to ruin the environment for their profits, and in fact they control education, academia, science and technology in ways that suit them. The media, government and judiciary are in fact complicit. They are bought and paid for, and left and right politics is in fact a complete illusion. They may tinker with policy, but in fact they have the same corporate masters. Are you beginning to get the picture and see why this world is set up in such a wrong fashion? Okay, as in the Iraq war, which was in fact a war to control, destroy a nation, control their natural resources, as in the oil. This war will indeed conclude with the same power grabs and resource control. And as in all recent wars, the war on terror, the war on drugs, the war on cancer, the war in the Middle East, this is intended to be a perpetual war. Why? Because they can perpetually profit from it. The war will be continued by the government and media despite the conclusion of the epidemic. The United Nations and the World Health Organization are in fact the brigadiers in this war. The government are the colonels, and the police state are in fact the ground troops. They are creating a restrictive technological control open air prisoner of war camp for us. In this way we will have no choice but to depend on their synthetic owned systems. And we will not be allowed to profit from natural technologies and our natural God-given rights to enjoy our lives as we see fit. And just as the war did not begin with the virus, it will not end with it either. The epidemic will end, but the threat of the return of the virus will be kept at a low level. You will be told about more possible peaks and waves. These will not happen, and you will have perhaps annual reruns, and this will allow them to keep the restrictive measures in place in terms of social distancing, travel restrictions and surveillance. Now, they are already starting to circulate the idea that all these measures they've put in place are in fact in line with what we should be doing anyway to combat climate change. Now, don't get triggered, but this is just in fact another illusion. CO2 is a non-enemy. It is not a poison, and it is not harmful. Nature will deal with it and balance it out. We cannot hope to ever affect it. Now, they will continue to roll out ridiculous models of catastrophic consequences of what will happen if we do not defeat the enemy, CO2, just as they have with their ridiculous models of 500,000 people dying due to this epidemic. It never happened. It was, in fact, a lie and an illusion. We will be told to keep the restrictive measures in place to save the planet. We have been conditioned now to live according to what is essential. Essential travel only, essential activity only. And of course, it is they who decide what is essential. Living a natural way is not essential. Creativity and enterprise is not essential. And the technology that they are putting in place will ensure that you comply. They want us to live in smart cities. Living in the countryside will be deemed environmentally unfriendly and wasteful. They want autonomous cars. And everything you do and everything you own will be hooked up to the internet to make sure you are living an essential only life and not being wasteful. Everything will be hooked up to the Internet of Things through the 5G network and smart meters. Oh, and by the way, they are completely obsessed with transhumanism and would love to merge humans with this machine also. Now, just as they planned very well how to use an epidemic to their own ends, they planned very well how to use climate change also. Now, I'm going to give you a quote. And this quote came from the First Global Revolution. It was a report by the Council of the Club of Rome. Now, you need to look at who the Club of Rome is. Of course, they are global corporatists. The same of Davos, the Committee of 300, all of these people. And this is what they said in 1991. In searching for a new enemy to unite us, we came up with the idea of pollution. The threat of global warming, water shortages, famine and the like would fit the bill. Well, you can insert pandemic there also. All of these dangers are caused by human intervention, And thus, the real enemy is humanity itself. We believe humanity requires a common motivation, namely a common adversary, in order to realise world government. It does not matter if this common enemy is a real one or one invented for the purpose. Just think about that. So can you see that this is an invented war against humanity with intended outcomes to create a consensus to accept the new technological revolution commanded and overseen by a world government? This is in fact already happening. It was directed from the WHO and UN and EU, who are telling your governments what to do and what to say and what measures to implement. There is no room for natural immunity or treatments. The only options are lockdown, synthetic immunity. The denial of all treatment is evident. The open technological prisoner of war camp will be based on a China-style regime. See how they are approving of all Chinese measures. Chinese society is in fact the model. They are now making a bold move, and it is nothing to do with defeating the virus or nothing to do with climate change. They want us locked down, unable to survive outside of their system, and they will deny us our natural existence and the natural world, which is actually only for them. Nature is only for them to plunder. Are we going to rely on and go begging to these maniacs and psychopaths to help us to heal and rebuild after this so-called war? Are we going to sit around and wait and see if they give us back our rights, our natural rights and our natural humanity? We need to wake from this trance, this illusion the media are creating for us, and we need to kill the fear. We need to realise who the enemy is. They are in fact global corporate fascists, and they have more money and more power than our governments. Now, you need to speak up if you think we are going down the wrong road, because this will encourage others to speak up also, and we need to start withdrawing our consent. This actually does worry them, and they will start to roll back their plans, because this is why they work so hard to convince you. They need us to go nice and quietly into the new technocracy that they are creating. Please look at Iceland and what happened in the banking collapse of 2008. They retook their parliament and they put the bankers in prison. Just as we need to retake our governments and our parliaments and judiciary, and we need to put whoever has been committing treason in prison. They are now making a very bold move, and it may take them another generation to implement their Chinese-style society. But if you do nothing, your children and your grandchildren will be living in, quite literally, what makes the Chinese regime look like a picnic right now. So, that's enough for today. Please let me know what you think. I hope you're staying sane out there, and I'll speak to you very soon. Bye.